Good morning. Continue on with Emerson's Nature, Section 5, Discipline. I think this is, Part 2. Sensible objects conform to the premonitions of reason and reflect the conscience. All things are moral, and in their boundless changes have an unceasing reference to spiritual nature. Therefore, is nature glorious with form, color, and motion. That every globe in the remotest heaven, every chemical change from the rudest crystal up to the laws of life, every change of vegetation from the first principle of growth to the eye of a leaf, to the tropical forest and the antediluvian coal mine, every animal function, from the sponge up to Hercules, shall hint or thunder to man the laws of right and wrong. And echo the Ten Commandments. Therefore is nature ever an ally to religion. Lends all her pomp and riches to the religious sentiment. Prophet and priests, David, Isaiah, Jesus, have drawn deeply from this source. This ethical character so penetrates the bones and marrow of nature as to seem the end for which it was made. Whatever private purpose is answered by any member of or part, this is its public and universal function and is never omitted. Nothing in nature is exhausted in its first use. When a thing has served an end to the uttermost, it is wholly new for the ulterior service. In God, every end is converted to new means. Thus, the use of commodity, regarded by itself, is mean and squalid. But it is to the mind an education in the doctrine of use, namely, that a thing is good only as far as it serves. That a conspiring of parts and efforts to the production of the end is essential to any being. The first and gross manifestation of this truth is our inevitable and hated training in values and wants in corn and meat. It has already been illustrated that every natural process in a version of moral sentence is a version of a moral sentence. The moral law lies in the center of nature and radiates to its circumference. It is the pith and marrow of every substance, every relation, and every process. All things with which we deal preach to us. What is a farm but a mute gospel? The chaff of wheat, weeds and plants, blight, rain, insect, sun, it is a sacred emblem from the first furrow of spring to the last stack, which the snow of winter overtakes the fields. But the sailor, the shepherd, the miner, the merchant, in their several resorts, have each an experience precisely parallel, and leading to the same conclusion, because all organizations are radically alike. Nor can it be doubted that this moral sentiment, which thus scents the air, grows in the grain, and impregnates the waters of the world, it is caught by man and sinks into his soul. The moral influence of nature upon every individual is the amount of truth, which it illustrates to him. Who can estimate this? Who can guess how much firmness the sea-beaten rock has taught the fisherman? How much tranquility has been reflected to man from the azure sky? Over whose unspotted deeps the wind forevermore drive flocks of stormy clouds, and leave no wrinkle or stain. How much industry or providence and affection we have caught from the pantomime of brutes. What is searching preacher or self-command in the varying phenomenon of health? Herein is especially apprehended the unity of nature. Unity in variety. Which meets us everywhere. Pause there for a second, because unity in nature is unity in variety. Now that's easy for me as a Trinitarian Christian. How did it work for Emerson, who was a Unitarian? Unity in variety. For me, that unity reflects out from the original community, right? Father, Son, and Spirit, eternally one God, three persons in community, in relationship, in variety. But here it is in Emerson, the famous Unitarian coming out of Harvard, the famous Unitarian institution, right, at the time. Let's read it again. Here is especially apprehended the unity in nature, the unity in variety, which meets us everywhere. See, that could have been written by a Franciscan, right? It could have been written by St. Francis or Clare or St. Bonaventure, right? The great theologian of the Trinity, meeting us everywhere. All the endless variety of things make an identical impression. Xenophonus complained in his old age that, look where he would, all things hasten back to unity. He was weary of seeing the same entity in the tedious variety of forms. The fable of Proteus was his cordial truth. A leaf, a drop, a crystal, a moment of time is related to the whole and partakes of the perfection of the whole. Each particle is a microcosm and faithfully renders the likeness of the world. Not only resemblances exist in the world and things whose analogy is obvious, as when we detect a type of human hand in the flipper of the fossil saurus, but also in objects wherein there is great superficial unlikeness. Thus, architecture is called frozen music by de Stael and Goethe. Viduvirus thought an architect should be a musician. A Gothic church, says Coleridge, is petrified religion. Michelangelo maintained that to an architect, a knowledge of anatomy is essential. In Haydn's oratorios, the notes present to the imagination not only motions, as of a snake, the stag, and the elephant, but colors also, as green grass. The law of harmonic sounds reappears in the harmonic colors. The granite is different in its laws only by the more or less of heat from the river that wears it away. The river as it flows resembles the air that flows over it, and the air resembles a light which traverses it with more subtle currents. The light resembles the heat which rides with it through space. Each creature is only a modification of the other. The likeness in them is more than the difference. And their radical law is one and the same, the rule of one art, or law of the one organization. Holds true throughout nature. So intimate is the unity that it is easily seen it lies under the undermost garment of nature and betrays its source in the universal spirit, for it pervades thoughts also. Every universal truth which we express in words implies or supposes every other truth. Omni verum vero constant, all truth accords the truth. It is like a great circle on a sphere, comprising all possible circles, which, however, may be drawn and comprise it in like manner. Every such truth is an absolute, ends seen from one side, but it has innumerable sides. Two things on this. It continues to, might as well have been written in the medieval times, right? By one of those medieval theologians, this section here, leading to harmony, right? Harmony, that medieval goal of education, Sturmy, and the cathedral schools all taught harmony. Music was central to it because the harmonious individual was the educated individual. And then this omni verum vero constant, right? All of truth accords one truth. This kind of idea, of course, resonates in the Catholic tradition understanding of scholarship, right? Which, of course, is why we had the university. The university is a place where everybody's working on their individual thing, but they understand that it all relates. Everything relates to the truth. All truth accords with truth. Truth itself. Meaning when I do my scholarship, even though I'm not in the university now, but the university have given up on that, right? They do not believe necessarily that physics relates to music, or that music relates to business administration, or that business administration relates to literature, or that literature relates to architecture, right? But that each of these things are separate. But when in truth, all truth accords with truth. Omni verum vero constant. And that's what the university is, and why it's called a university. I'm not sure they can use that word validly the way that they continue on with all this being separate disciplines unrelated to one another. And so my work has also been interdisciplinary with this old idea of harmony and all truth accord one truth. The central unity is more conspicuous in actions. Words are finite organs of the infinite mind. They cannot cover the dimensions of what is in truth. They break, chop, and impoverish it. An action is the perfection and publication of thought. A right action seems to fill the eye and to be related to all nature. The wise man, in doing one thing, does all, or in the one thing he does rightly, he sees the likeness of all which is done rightly. Words and actions are not the attributes of brute nature. They enter to us human form, of which all other organizations appear to be degradations. When this appears among so many that surround it, the Spirit prefers it to all others. It says, "From such as this have I drawn joy and knowledge. In such as this have I found and beheld myself. I will speak to it. It can speak again. It can yield me thought, already formed and alive." In fact, the eye, the mind, is always accompanied by these forms, male and female, and these are incomparably the richest informations of the power and order that lie at the heart of things. Unfortunately, every one of them bears the mark of some injury, is marred, and superficially defective. Nevertheless, far different from all deaf and dumb nature around them, these all rest like fountain pipes on the unfathomed sea of thought, and virtue whereto they alone of all organizations are the entrances. It were a pleasant inquiry to follow into detail their ministry and to our education. But where would it stop? We are associated in adolescent and adult life with some friends who, like skies and water, are coextensive with our idea, who, answering each to a certain affection of the soul, satisfy our desire on that side, whom we lack power to put at such focal distance from us that we can bend or even analyze them. We cannot choose but love them. When much intercourse with a friend has supplied us with a standard of excellence and has increased our respect for the resources of God, who thus sends a real person to outgo our ideal, when he has, moreover, become an object of thought, and whilst his character retains all its unconscious effort, is converted in the mind into solid and sweet wisdom, it is a sign to us that his office is closing, and he is commonly withdrawn from our sight in a short time.